Welcome. Again, my name is Katie. I am a volunteer with Gateway Pet Guardians. I am one of the enrichment team volunteers. I'm actually kind of the lead of that group. Essentially, what I am responsible for is making sure to get educated about enrichment, share it with the community, and really work with the shelter dogs to make sure that they are getting enrichment. So today's presentation is all in regards to some basics about enrichment. It is part of our new Naughty to Nice Canine Bootcamp series. And that particular bootcamp is about 8 weeks long. It's going to have a combination of both enrichment and training tips and tricks throughout the next 8 weeks. And at the very end, anyone who is participating and doing some of what we're calling our homework, you will receive a certificate at the very end. And it looks like, there we go. So what is enrichment? Enrichment actually helps meet the physical and psychological needs of our pets. Specifically for shelter dogs, it's really important that these dogs get physical and mentally stimulated. An enriched environment allows animals to make choices, and that actually increases their sense of control over their environment. And it actually taps into a lot of their natural behaviors and instincts. Our goals are really going to be, when it comes to enrichment, our goal is really to encourage natural behaviors, to increase physical interactions, to increase mental stimulation, to decrease stress, and to overall improve well-being of the dogs. Some of the natural instincts of dogs are specifically chewing, foraging, aka sniffing around, doing physical activity, interacting with other dogs and people, so socializing, shredding, and just being mentally stimulated. Obviously, when it comes to enrichment activities, we are doing things that are going to encourage these natural instincts, which is why we really, really stress that during any enrichment activity, it actually is supervised, because your instincts, if you are harnessing them, can be done in a very constructive way rather than destructive. But if you aren't supervising, oftentimes they can take what they're learning and kind of expand it to other things that maybe you don't want them to chew or you don't want them to kind of get involved in. So it is really important that any of these activities that we do talk about, that you are actually supervising and or doing them with the dog. So components of enrichment, we have sensory, feeding and nutrition, training, socialization, and exercise. Just so you guys are aware that during this particular 8 week, a lot of our enrichment activities are really going to be around more the sensory, feeding, nutrition, and training. There are obviously some components of socialization, which I'll go into, that tie into that. But obviously, with the fact that everyone is currently at a stay-at-home order, socialization might be something that I want you guys to be aware of, but it's probably not something we're necessarily going to be able to do or encourage for the next couple of weeks. And then obviously exercise, I'll talk more about each one of these. Exercise is just something that you should naturally be doing. And again, I'll be talking about each one of these in just a moment. The thing to know about the different components is, while they are kind of separate things that we're going to talk about, a lot of times the activities overlap. So something that might be is a sensory activity, it also has a component of the feeding piece or the exercise piece. So they do overlap. So sensory, we do have a variety of different kind of sensory things when it comes to the dogs. So you have their sense of scent, so the olfactory. This is the primary sensory that they do. We usually try to encourage this with like doing a lot of scent work, or they have to use their nose to find or forage for different food. You can see in the video, we actually have one of our shelter dogs who actually is now adopted. He's actually doing one of the activities that we did in the shelter just a couple of weeks ago. Another sensory is actually going to be visual stimulation. And then the last is really going to be auditory. One thing I really want to stress about auditory, right here I have sounds versus silence. It is important to know that for auditory, it is a good thing to have kind of different sounds, expose dogs to different noises. But there is also an important piece to make sure that the dogs do have time of kind of silence. It kind of is like giving them a break. A lot of times when it comes to these activities, some dogs can get very overstimulated, especially when it comes to the auditory sounds. So just kind of while you're supervising them, see how they are reacting, see how they're behaving, and you're going to be adjusting activities based off of what your dog does or does not like. So just know that a lot of times when we're doing any of these activities, especially the auditory, we're rooting that they're being exposed to kind of different sounds or visual stimulations, different things that they can look at. But at the same time, just being mindful that sometimes having a quiet or having a do nothing or having just one or two objects is oftentimes enough that they're not getting overstimulated. A key piece to successful enrichment is actually doing things that are novel experiences. Dogs really like a challenge. So oftentimes, if you find something that your dog really likes, you don't want to do it day and day and day and day again. When you're very repetitive, it kind of becomes old news for a dog. And so we want to make sure that things are being kept as novel or new for them. Another thing to know about the novel piece, sometimes you can actually, again, rotate out activities, tailor their enrichment to things that you know that your dog likes. One simple thing is to actually just take their toys and change them out. So if you have a dog that has, we'll just say a dog has 7 toys, every day you can present a different toy and rotate them, or have 3 toys out for a couple of days and then take those 3 away and give them a new toy for the next couple of days. When you represent something, it's kind of like, oh my gosh, it's something new, and it just kind of enhances that experience for them. So as we go through the next 8 weeks and you guys get examples of different enrichment activities, if you find ones that your dog really, really enjoys, make sure that you do add those into the rotation, but keep in mind that you don't want to do them every single day. Feeding enrichment. This is actually one that we do a lot with our shelter dogs. Essentially, dogs prefer to work for their food. In most cases, if you actually give the dog a choice of a bowl of food that is just left out versus having food that they work for, that's in a puzzle or part of your training regimen, or hiding the food that they have to find it or forage for it, the dogs are often going to go for the activity. It's not just about the eating, it's about mentally thinking about how am I going to get the food, and using kind of all of their senses at once to mentally stimulate them as they're eating. There are a variety of different feeding enrichment tools that can be used. So we have Kongs, we have puzzles, we have slow feeders. They make like these little containers that kind of, it'll dispense treats if they knock into it, kind of thing. All of those are available in the commercial market, but they can be as simple as using different types of food or different textures of food, or even using things around your home that you can use to kind of create a feeding enrichment activity. And again, these are things that we'll be exploring over the next 8 weeks to give you ideas of ways to be creative in regards to the slow feeder or the feeding enrichment. Some things to kind of be aware. You do want to take some safety measures when it comes around to feeding enrichment. First thing is always making sure that you're aware if your dog has any allergies. If they're allergic to something that we kind of present in one of these, just make sure to know that you might have to skip that particular item, or you have to swap it out for something that the dog's not allergic to. If you're not aware of your dog's allergies, the other thing I would recommend is if you haven't tried something with the dog before, just make sure that that one new food item is the only new food item that you present, just to see if there are any allergies. So for instance, if we tell you to do a recipe that maybe has peanut butter and has bananas and has strawberries, if your dog has never been exposed to strawberries or peanut butter before, you might only want to choose one of those just to kind of keep an eye on that. Another thing is a lot of times with feeding enrichment, you want to make sure that you're not overfeeding your dog. So if you typically give your dog 2 cups of food a day, just make sure that when you're doing some of these activities, if you're using some of their actual dog food as part of the treats, just make sure that instead of giving 2 cups in a bowl, maybe you're only doing 1.5 cups because you're using the other half to do whatever the activity is. Oftentimes for our shelter dogs, we don't worry about it as much because they tend to be a lot more stressed, and we tend to feed them more in general just so that they don't get in the habit of losing weight while they're at the shelter. But it is something to be aware of in your home. The last item is in regards to safety, and I'll go over this a lot more towards the end, is if you do have a dog who resource guards food or toys, you want to make sure that you're taking precautions with those particular corks. The next component is training. So some of the basic training are going to be clicker training, your basic commands, and your tricks. Again, during this 8-week course, we'll actually be doing different training techniques with you guys live on Facebook and in videos. When it comes to our foster dogs particularly, it's really, really helpful to have our fosters learn basic commands, learn how to walk on a leash. Those really are really important when trying to market our foster dogs. Oftentimes, if you have the choice of having like a 3-year-old dog that knows no commands and doesn't know how to walk on a leash, it's going to be harder to adopt them out than, say, a 3-year-old dog who knows how to walk on a leash and maybe knows how to sit and stay. Tricks are always a really fun one. Again, really, really high value when it comes to our foster program. If your dog can learn how to do a particular trick, shake hands, go in circles, jump over a hurdle, I don't know. Oftentimes those really go over very well in our marketing. So it is a really good idea to have your dog learn some of, fun tricks, things that you would show off at a cocktail party kind of thing. And again, training is part of an enrichment because it is a combination of bonding with you as the handler, but also mentally stimulating them. The last 2 components I combined, it's socialization and exercise. So socialization, there are 2 types of socialization. One is socialization dog with dog. So at our shelter, we have our play groups that we do. We do a lot of dog testing. I know Brittany has been doing a lot of dog groups and training. And so socialization with dogs is really important. We have a photo here that has dogs doing a pack walk. Our Adventure Tail pack walks are really, really good for getting dogs socialized. They may not ever interact during the pack walks, but dogs are learning how to walk as a group. They're learning how the appropriate behaviors that they should be showing off when they are walking, so that they're not lunging or growling. They're learning how to be comfortable around other dogs. The other socialization is with humans. So right now, obviously, that is a little bit challenging to have your dog interact necessarily with other humans because humans can't have contact with humans. But this socialization also means with the person that they are either living with as the foster, or if you have adopted your dog, with your pet. Um, Human interaction is really important for dogs to learn just how to be in our environment, expectations that we have. So that can be anything from doing some grooming, giving them a bath, brushing them. It's an opportunity for socialization with us. At the shelter, we have the cuddle room. That's an opportunity for the dogs to not be in their own space by themselves, but to be in a space where it's calm and quiet, but with a person. Another thing that can be done with socialization that includes humans, I think this may be one of the future topics, is actually dog massage. Um, it's really comforting for dogs, but it also, again, is kind of just enhancing that person contact with them. The other component is exercise. Obviously, exercise is vital for the health of your dog. But exercise includes both a physical and cognitive component. So, like I said, a lot of these enrichment components really do overlap. So just know for physical exercise, our weather is really nice. And as long as you're social distancing and giving the space that your dog needs and that we need right now, getting out there to make sure to take walks. If you are a person who maybe you don't want to necessarily walk very far or very fast, that's okay. A really important part of exercise, again, is that cognitive piece. So even if you're walking around the block, take your time and encourage your dog to smell things. A walk can last 30 minutes and be just literally down the street and back, because a dog who really is invested in smelling their environment, seeing, what dog peed on that tree and what did that squirrel just do, that is really kind of getting their mind going and using that mental stimulation piece that can wear them out just as much as running 3 miles. One way that you can encourage that sniffing, if they're not just naturally doing it, you can always take a few treats and kind of just toss them in front of them, into the grass. So they have to smell and forage, and then they're going to be in that habit of wanting to smell and see where the next treat is. All right. Oh, I'm sorry. Another thing about exercise, I think we might be doing some agility training as well, and that is a component of the exercise as well. So, enrichment practices. For the remainder of our series, we really are going to be focusing on easy things to do in the home. You should see on the screen right now a photo. I just took a picture of a bunch of stuff that I have on my desk right now, or on my kitchen table. That is just a bunch of stuff that I'm potentially going to be using over the next 8 weeks with you guys. Some of the stuff you can see are store-bought things that I want to kind of go over, but you can see there's random things. There's a bag, there's a box, there's a muffin tin, there's a Girl Scout cookie insert. Pretty much anything in your house has the potential to be used as enrichment. So I want you guys to kind of start getting your juices flowing to see what in your home might you have that maybe you could use in some way. As far as what we're going to be focusing on, we're really going to be focusing on things that are free or cheap, especially now that we're currently at the stay-at-home situation. If it's not in your house, I don't want you guys to feel like you have to run out and get it. So we're going to try to make sure that it's common things that you might have in your home. We're going to make sure that they are things that are easy to prepare, things that are edible or disposable, or just really simple to clean. I don't want to make anything be a super huge mess. Things that are both creative and safe. So this is where I really want to talk about the resource guarding piece. Again, if you do know that your dog is a resource guarder when it comes to toys and food, you really are going to have to tailor some of these activities. It's not saying that you can't do them, it's just you have to do them in a safe way. So if your dog is a resource guarder and you have multiple dogs in the home, make sure you're only doing this activity one dog at a time when the other dogs are either in their kennels or they're out in a separate space. If you have a dog that is a strong resource guarder, and I just realized some people might not know what that means, but essentially they're going to communicate with you that they don't want you to take that object. They don't want you to have your hand near their toy or near their food. Chances are they're probably going to growl at you. Some dogs kind of hover over whatever the object is. Things that could potentially lead to a bite, which we want to avoid. It's okay if they're growling to let you know that you're too close, but we don't want to push them over their threshold. So a couple of other tips are you can do some of these activities while they're kenneled. That way, while they're in their crate, as soon as the food is gone, you can then transition them out and it shouldn't be an issue. Some really extreme ones, just know that you probably don't want to be doing a Kong with them, but there are alternatives to the Kong that I'm going to make sure that we try to incorporate over the next 8 weeks so that we can make sure that every dog has in mind, has the ability to do some of these. And again, if you guys have specific questions throughout the course or just in general after you see this presentation, please feel free to let us know in advance if you have concerns or if you have a special needs dog that we need to keep in mind that we can make sure that we incorporate some way or shape or form. So this coming week is pretty much all enrichment based. So this is our schedule for this week. Again, we're going to be really trying to be creative in what we present. We will be making sure to give you a supply list before each one so that not only do you can look to see if you have the supplies or you can work to have the supplies in the future. But we're also trying to do some of this stuff live. That way you guys can do the activities while we're doing it. So if we're creating something or there's prep work to it, we're going to try to do it with you just so you know how to actually set and prep things. I'm going to look and see if there are any questions, but I don't see any that have come in. So I appreciate everyone's time. Thank you for being on this first live webinar and looking at my pretty presentation. I appreciate it. Again, I hope that this gives you some basic background as to why enrichment is important, kind of some basic background as to what we're going to be doing for the next 8 weeks. Again, if you have questions, feel free to drop them in the comments and I will work my way through them over the next couple of days. And again, if you have a specific need that you want to learn about, or you have a dog that you want to know kind of alternative things that you can do or alternative ways to do a particular activity, you can either drop us a comment or you can feel free to actually message us privately. So thank you all for being on this webinar and have a great day.